Imagine walking through life, wearing invisible chains, forged not by the world around you, but by moments buried deep within your past. Think, what if the beliefs you hold, the fears you carry, and even the way you love weren't truly yours, but inherited? Echoes of childhood wounds you never asked for. This isn't just psychology, it's personal. It's about reclaiming your story from the silent grip of pain you might not even remember. And today, we'll take a journey through the mind of one of the greatest psychological thinkers in history, Carl Jung, to uncover how your early experiences shape your identity, and more importantly, how to free yourself from them. Because what you'll hear in the next few minutes may change how you understand not only your past, but your power to rewrite your future. And the last insight we'll explore is the most powerful of all. It holds the key to your inner liberation. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who pioneered analytical psychology, believed that much of human suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from what remains unresolved within us. He argued that the human psyche is shaped in layers, and one of the deepest is the childhood unconscious, a storehouse of emotions, beliefs, and narratives we absorbed when we were most vulnerable. Think back, not just to events, but to the emotional climate of your early life. Were you heard? Were you safe? Were you allowed to be your full self? Or were parts of you, your anger, your curiosity, your sensitivity, dismissed or even punished? Jung taught that the child inside us doesn't disappear with time. It lives on, silently scripting our behaviors, our fears, our desires. He called it the inner child, and unless we acknowledge it, understand it, and heal it, that child will continue to drive our adult lives from the shadows. Why do we sabotage relationships just as they begin to feel meaningful? Why do we chase achievements but never feel good enough? Why do some of us fear abandonment, while others fear intimacy? These patterns often trace back to what Jung described as complexes, unconscious clusters of emotion and memory tied to early life experiences. For example, someone who felt emotionally neglected as a child may form a worthlessness complex, believing they must constantly prove their value to be loved. This belief becomes a lens through which they see the world, not reality, but a reflection of old pain. But here's the crucial truth. Those childhood wounds are not your identity. They are experiences. Powerful, yes, but not permanent. They are chapters, not your entire story. And here is where the true power of Jung's philosophy comes alive. He believed in the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming the most whole, integrated version of yourself. To individuate means to peel back the layers of inherited beliefs, unconscious programming, and emotional scar tissue, and to discover the self that existed before the wounds. It's not an easy path. It asks you to look inward, to confront parts of yourself you've avoided, to ask uncomfortable questions like, whose voice is this really? Why do I react this way to love, to success, to criticism? Am I living my truth, or someone else's version of who I should be? These questions don't lead to quick answers, but they do open the door to self-awareness. And with awareness comes the power to choose differently. Let's go deeper. Jung emphasized the importance of shadow work, the practice of confronting the rejected, suppressed parts of ourselves. These shadows often form in childhood when we learn that certain emotions or behaviors are unacceptable. A boy cries and is told to man up. A girl speaks her mind and is scolded for being too much. And so, pieces of the self are hidden away, locked in the unconscious. But what is buried does not die. It leaks out in subtle ways, in self-sabotage, in anxiety, in unexplained anger. By doing shadow work, we reclaim those parts. We say to our inner child, "You are seen, you are safe, you are allowed to be whole." This isn't just theory. Modern psychology echoes these truths. The work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, reveals how unresolved childhood trauma gets stored in the body, influencing not only our emotions, but even our physical health. Neuroscience confirms that early emotional neglect can alter brain development, reinforcing Jung's claim that our past continues to live in the present unless we bring it to light. But here's the empowering part. Your brain is plastic. Your patterns can change. You are not bound to the wounds of your upbringing. You can heal. You can become conscious. And that's exactly what Jung calls us to do. To wake up, to become aware of the scripts we've inherited, and to rewrite them with intention. Have you ever felt like you're repeating the same emotional loop? Different people, different places, but the same pain? This is not a coincidence. It's your psyche's way of inviting you to heal what has been left unresolved. Life will keep placing mirrors in front of you until you recognize the child inside, still waiting for your attention. So ask yourself, what wounds am I still carrying that I've mistaken for personality? What fears have I normalized because I've lived with them for so long? Where in my life am I reacting as the wounded child instead of responding as the conscious adult I now have the power to be? Let this moment be the beginning of something new, because the next insight we'll explore, one that goes beyond the shadows and wounds, will reveal how to actually transform those inner scars into sources of strength, clarity, and authenticity. Jung didn't just diagnose the problem, he gave us a map for becoming whole. And that map continues in the next step of our journey. You see, Jung believed that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about integrating it, not pretending that the pain never happened, but understanding that even your wounds have something to teach you. He often said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That darkness, those painful memories, those buried fears, contains within them the seeds of your transformation. When you start to bring the unconscious into the light, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop being a victim of your story, and you become the author of it. But how do you do this? What does this transformation look like in practical terms? It begins with awareness, self-observation, without judgment. Begin noticing your patterns, the way you react in conflict, the way you handle rejection, the stories you tell yourself when you fail. Ask yourself, are these reactions truly me, or are they echoes of a younger version of me still trying to be safe? Jung called this kind of inquiry inner work, a journey not for the faint-hearted, but for those willing to face themselves fully. And the reward: authenticity, peace, the ability to live from the center of your being rather than from the wounds of your past. Take, for instance, the person who grew up feeling invisible, always trying to please others, afraid of disappointing anyone. As an adult, they may become overly accommodating, unable to set boundaries, constantly seeking approval from the outside. This looks like kindness, but inside, it's fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of being alone. Now imagine this same person becoming aware of this pattern. They begin to see that their need to please is rooted not in love, but in survival. With that realization comes choice. The choice to speak up, to say no, to let go of relationships that only thrive when they self-abandon. That's transformation, that's individuation in action. Jung's message is clear. You are not meant to stay in the role you were given in childhood. You are meant to evolve beyond it. Your family, your early environment, they shaped you, yes, but they do not define the full extent of who you are. This is why Jung placed such importance on confronting what he called the persona, the mask we wear in society, crafted to gain approval and avoid rejection. Often this mask forms in childhood when we learn that certain aspects of ourselves are unwelcome, and so we perform. We hide our vulnerability, our rage, our softness, our truth. But over time, the mask becomes suffocating. You begin to wonder why you feel disconnected, numb, lost. It's because the real you, the whole you, has been buried beneath layers of conditioning. And this is where Jung's work becomes deeply liberating. He invites you to remove the mask, not recklessly, but courageously, to let yourself be seen, to reclaim the parts of yourself you once had to abandon. The process of individuation is not about perfection, it's about wholeness. And wholeness includes light and shadow, joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability. It means accepting that you are a complex, evolving being. Not a role, not a wound, not a label. Let's pause here for a moment and reflect on something powerful. If your wounds could speak, what would they say? Would they ask for attention, for compassion, for your willingness to stop running and finally listen? What part of you have you silenced because someone once told you it was too much, too weak, too wrong? Write it down. Let it rise. Give it a voice. Because the moment you begin to speak the truth of your pain, it loses its grip on you. And in its place, you gain clarity, self-respect, freedom. This is not a journey you take once. It's ongoing. It deepens with time. Jung knew this. He saw psychological development as a spiral, not a straight line, but a continuous return to deeper and deeper layers of the self. And yet, with each turn of the spiral, you come back stronger, wiser, more awake. This path may not be easy, but it is meaningful. It is sacred, because every step you take toward understanding yourself is a step toward healing not just your own life, but the lives of those around you. When you break a cycle, you change the future. When you stop letting your childhood wounds dictate your actions, you give the next generation a new template, one not based on fear, but on truth and love. This is how personal healing becomes collective healing. This is why your story matters. And as you begin to integrate all these parts of yourself, the wounded child, the fearful adolescent, the masked adult, you begin to find something extraordinary underneath it all. Your essence, the part of you that was never broken, the part that was watching, waiting, enduring, the part that is ready now to lead. But here's the key. You cannot step fully into this power until you face what you've avoided. Jung warned that we all have a shadow, not just a personal one, but a collective one. If we don't face our personal shadow, we project it onto others. We blame, we judge, we create conflict. But when we own our shadow, we become whole. What have you been projecting onto others that might actually live within you? What qualities in others trigger you, not because of who they are, but because they remind you of a part of yourself you've rejected? This is the heart of shadow work, and it is the gateway to authenticity. To meet the shadow is to meet yourself, the self that doesn't seek approval, but wholeness, the self that doesn't fear pain, but transforms it. And this leads us to one of Jung's most liberating insights, one that we will explore in the next chapter of our journey. Because while shadow work and childhood healing are vital, there is something even more powerful awaiting you. A deeper force that emerges when you've looked within and found your center. A force that connects you to purpose, to meaning, and to something far greater than yourself. It is the final key, the one that binds all the others, and it's what we'll uncover next. When Carl Jung spoke of healing, he wasn't just pointing toward freedom from pain. He was pointing toward a deeper, richer life, a life of meaning, a life in which the self, the truest, most complete version of who you are, begins to take the lead. And this is the final key we now begin to unlock, discovering yourself beyond the wounds. Up to now, we've talked about the pain, the unconscious patterns, the inner child, the shadows, and all of that matters. But Jung believed that healing was never the end goal. It is only the gateway. Because once we face our wounds and integrate our shadow, we begin to hear a different voice within, one that isn't reacting from fear or longing for approval, one that speaks with quiet confidence, with clarity. This is the self, the core of who you are, beyond the defenses and traumas of childhood. Jung saw the self as the organizing principle of the psyche. It is what calls us toward growth, wholeness, and authenticity. And here's the truth that may change everything. This self has always been there, even in your darkest moments, even when you felt lost, disconnected, or unworthy. The self was quietly observing, waiting for you to return. So how do we reconnect with it? It begins with listening, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet truths inside you. Through dreams, through synchronicities, through the gut feelings you've been taught to ignore. Jung called this process individuation, not just healing the wounds of the past, but aligning with your inner truth. And when you begin to live from this place, something profound happens. Life becomes meaningful again. The patterns of the past lose their grip. You stop seeking fulfillment outside of yourself because you begin to experience it within. You stop chasing validation and start following your purpose. You stop fearing solitude and begin enjoying your own company. You stop reliving the same stories and start writing a new one. Think about that for a moment. How many decisions in your life have been made from a place of fear? Fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of repeating the past. Now imagine what it would be like to make decisions from a place of wholeness, to trust your intuition, to honor your boundaries, to pursue what feels aligned rather than what feels safe. That is the invitation of individuation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you already are. And Jung made it clear, this path is not linear. It's not a straight climb. It's a spiral with many returns. But each return brings new depth, new clarity. The key is to remain committed to the journey. So many people stay stuck, not because they lack desire, but because they fear what will happen if they let go of who they were taught to be. Because the unknown, even when it leads to freedom, feels terrifying. But here's something powerful to remember. The unknown is not your enemy. It is the space where your true self can finally emerge. What if your anxiety isn't a sign that something's wrong with you, but a signal that you're living out of alignment with your truth? What if your sadness isn't weakness, but a call to return to something lost? What if your triggers are not proof of failure, but invitations to heal what you've ignored? This is the kind of inner questioning that transforms lives. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between coping and thriving, between existing and truly living. And as you walk this path, you begin to develop something that Jung considered essential to the human journey, a relationship with the unconscious. You stop fearing what's beneath the surface. You become curious. You invite your dreams to speak. You pay attention to symbols, to patterns, to the deeper layers of your experience. you begin to realize that life is not just a series of random events, but a dialogue between you and something greater. Whether you call it the psyche, the soul, or something divine, it is real, and it's always been guiding you. This is where psychology meets spirituality, not in a religious sense, but in a deeply human sense. You realize that you are not just a mind reacting to the world, you are a soul unfolding through it. And the more you reconnect with that truth, the more powerful your transformation becomes. Carl Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But let's be honest, that privilege often comes with pain. Growth asks for sacrifice. You may have to let go of old identities, of relationships that no longer serve you, of roles you've played for years. You may face resistance from others, even from yourself. But what you gain is priceless. Inner peace, a sense of home within your own being, and a life that reflects your truth, not your trauma. So here is the question to carry with you. Who are you when you are no longer performing your pain? When you stop being the people pleaser, the overachiever, the avoider, the perfectionist? What remains when you strip it all away? What remains is the self, and that self is enough. That self is wise. That self is waiting. But don't rush. This journey is sacred. It unfolds in layers, in seasons. There is no finish line, only deeper truth. The more you live in alignment with your inner self, the more your external life begins to shift. Your relationships change. Your purpose becomes clear. Your voice becomes strong. Because now, you're no longer living as a reaction to the past. You're living as a conscious expression of your present. And yet, there is one more piece, one final powerful insight that brings all of this together. It's the deepest truth that Jung left us, a truth that speaks not only to your psychology or your emotions, but to your destiny. And in our final chapter, we'll uncover this truth. We'll explore what it means to become truly free, not just from the wounds of childhood, but from the illusion that those wounds define who you are. Because once you understand this last piece, nothing will ever be the same again. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And yet, that is the very threshold of freedom. Because the greatest prison is not the one built by others. It is the one we build inside ourselves, forged from the bars of shame, fear, and silence. Now imagine those bars dissolving. Imagine stepping out of the prison of your childhood story, not because the story wasn't real, but because it no longer owns you. This is the final and most powerful insight. You are not your wound. You are the one who heals. The wound may have shaped you, but it does not define you. The pain may have left scars, but it cannot erase your essence. Everything you've lived, every loss, every trauma, every tear has been part of a larger unfolding. And while you didn't choose the pain, you now have the power to choose what it becomes. Jung didn't promise a life without suffering. He promised something far more meaningful. A life where suffering is not wasted. A life where your darkness becomes the seed of your light. Where the fire that burned you is the same fire that forges your strength. But for that to happen, you must stop waiting for the world to fix what happened. You must stop giving your power to the past. Because here's what Jung teaches us. Healing is not about returning to who you were. It's about becoming who you were meant to be. And that version of you, the integrated whole conscious self, only emerges through the fire, through the silence, through the long nights, when you choose not to numb, but to feel, when you choose not to run, but to stay, to face the mirror and not turn away. This is the real transformation. This is the rebirth. But let's bring it down to where you are right now. Maybe you're still carrying the weight of things you never said, the love you never received, the parent who couldn't love you, the silence that screamed louder than words. Maybe you've become so used to your pain that it feels like home. But pain is not your home. Truth is. And here's the most liberating truth of all. You don't need to become anyone else. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to return to the self that was always there. The child before the wound, the soul before the fear, the quiet voice inside that still knows who you are. Can you feel it? That longing not just to be healed, but to be whole. Not just to survive, but to live. That is not fantasy. That is not weakness. That is your true self calling you back. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. It's not a concept, it's a lived reality, a deep alignment between your inner world and your outer actions, a life where your values match your voice, where you don't just wear your truth, where you embody it. It's the life where you finally stop apologizing for being who you are. Because here's the truth, you are not here to be small. You are not here to fit into the mold someone else made for you. You are here to expand, to evolve, to wake up. And that waking up, that remembering of who you are, begins with one simple but radical act. Self-acceptance. Not conditional, not once you're healed, not once you're fixed, but now, as you are. Messy, human, sacred. Because you are not broken. You are becoming. You are not a collection of flaws. You are a mosaic of experiences, stitched together with resilience and grace. And when you embrace that, truly embrace it, something powerful happens. You begin to make peace, not just with your past, but with your purpose. You stop waiting for closure from others because you realize you can give it to yourself. You stop hoping someone will rescue you because you become the one who saves you. And most of all, you stop defining yourself by who hurt you and start defining yourself by who you're choosing to become. That is the moment everything changes. That is when you stop living as a reaction and start living as a revelation. So now I ask you, who are you becoming? Not the version you were told to be, not the version you pretended to be, but the real you, the courageous, conscious self who dares to live with integrity, with heart, and with presence. That is the final gift of Jung's teachings, not just insight, but transformation, not just knowledge, but embodiment, not just healing, but wholeness. Because your life is not meant to be a reflection of your wounds. It is meant to be a reflection of your wisdom. You've walked through the fire. Now walk in your truth. You've seen the darkness. Now be the light. And never forget, the journey is ongoing. But every step you take toward yourself is a step toward freedom. Every truth you speak is a piece of your power reclaimed. Every boundary you set is a wall removed from the prison of your past. You are not your pain. You are the one who carries the torch beyond it. So carry it with courage, with someone else needs to find their way home. And if this message resonated with you, if it stirred something in your soul, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it, reflect on it, and most of all, live it. Because the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who are real. More people who have faced their shadows and chosen love. More people who have felt the pain and walked forward anyway. That's you. And your journey is just beginning.